Today I am doing a presentation on lung cancer prevention in the geriatric population. My name is Adam Amato. I'm one of the health educators involved with this project, along with Denisha Tuting, Nancy LeBron, Jessica Nieto, and Kimberly Greenway, who have all worked very hard on this presentation. And this is Zach Rackenard, my student for today. So my audience, the geriatric population, it's defined as individuals equal to or greater than 65 years of age. Simple enough. However, this population is very at risk for lung cancer. Our objective for today is to demonstrate a variety of behaviors to avoid or reduce health risks to this population. Did you know the highest rate of new lung and bronchial cancers occur in those 70 to 84 years old?
I did not.
Cigarette smoke is the #1 cause of lung cancer. That should be fairly obvious at this point.
Did you say 74 to 78?
70 to 84
70 to 84.
is the highest age. Still all within the geriatric population though, Zach. It's one of those things. Each year, nearly 500,000 Americans die prematurely due to smoking or exposure to secondhand smoke. And Zach, have you or someone you know ever smoked before?
Yeah. I mean, I don't smoke regularly, but yes, I have smoked on occasion.
Okay. Well, as you've just learned, it attributes to lung cancer development. Have you ever had any health issues related to this brief smoking at all?
Oh, no.
Okay. Thank goodness. So lung cancer itself, what is it?
A cancer of the lungs, I guess.
That's correct, but more specifically, it's cancer that forms in the tissue of lungs, usually in the air passage lining. We can get tumors in those areas, and that's how we say bad news bears. Okay, now there's different types of lung cancer, as we may know. There's small cell carcinoma, aka small cell lung cancer. It's very aggressive, fast growing. We can view it as basically as a weed. It just expands within the lungs. It can also spread to other parts of the body, also known as metastasizing. Under the microscope, they're very small, almost oval shape. I'll give you a view of that there. It's a little bit of histology for you.
Okay.
And they make up 10 to 15% of the cases for lung cancer. So thankfully, the small metastasizing carcinoma is not the more common one. However, the non-small cell lung cancer is nothing to really, how you say, not worry about. It's still very dangerous in itself. And there's 3 different kinds of non-small cell lung cancer. There's squamous cell carcinoma, large cell carcinoma, and adenocarcinoma, which makes up 85 to 90% of cases. I'm going to show you a diagram right now, Zach, of the lungs. If you want to go and take a look at that there.
Okay.
And what I just showed you from here, tumors can form in these areas, especially in the bloodstream, and actually interfere with the oxygen exchange going from the heart back through the lungs and all throughout the body. If these cancer cells get in there, they start depleting the actual oxygen reservoir, and in some cases it can lead to hypoxia, which is lower oxygen levels, which of course will lead to breathing problems in ourselves. Looking across the pond, so to speak, in the UK, 1 in 2 will be diagnosed with lung cancer within their lifetimes. However, it's been beat more than ever before. Since the 1970s, survival rates have doubled in that area. So, there's some hope for us. how do we prevent lung cancer? There's three main ways: primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. I'm going to go through these one by one for you. Primary is basically the front lines of prevention. It's things that we do before problems even occur. We want to get vaccinations, we want to be healthy as possible, whether that's through exercise, eating, so on and so forth. That's the literal definition. But for lung cancer itself, specifically, we can look at legislation and enforcement to ban certain chemicals in our environment, things such as asbestos, an airborne material that can get in our lungs. We can do more heavy enforcement against smoking in public areas, being mindful of secondhand smoke. I believe that happened in our lifetimes, where we have restaurants that no longer have a smoking section, but rather smoking patios, things like that.
It's also illegal to smoke in vehicles with children in the car now, right? Yeah, that happened within our lifetime, so.
Yeah. Secondary prevention. These things are more cautionary. They're feeling as if it's screening before the onset of signs and symptoms. So this is a tricky one. Secondary prevention, anybody within the geriatric population, we suggest that people aged 55 and older do undergo lung cancer screenings for this demographic. Not a lot of people seem to know that, even if they're asymptomatic. As we'll get into a little bit later, some of lung cancer symptoms don't show up immediately at all. Sometimes not until stages 2 and 3. So we can go through our lives not knowing we have lung cancer. This actually happened with a doctor I worked with, who he had to quit his job because he found out his cancer had already metastasized. He didn't even know he had it. So that is secondary prevention. We want to screen before we actually have the symptoms, and treating the disease as soon as possible. We want to prevent re-injury, reoccurrence. And last but not least is tertiary prevention. These are things that we do once we're actually afflicted. This includes chemotherapy, rehabilitation, and further follow-up screenings. And we aim to impact the effects of an ongoing injury with this.
So what are some forms of like rehab that somebody might go through?
We can go through a lot of the same rehab that lung cancer uses is similar to those with other chronic diseases, including cardiac and stroke rehabilitation programs. So we do physical activity, we do vocational rehabilitation to help retrain workers that might have lost their jobs due to these treatments. So it's basically supporting our lives moving forward. And for this activity, I want you to just recall the definitions for primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And if you want to give me a sample yourself there, Zach.
So I guess
Let me see what you got written down over here.
I just wrote kind of fast notes, but so primary I wrote down kind of like it's like the preventative measures, so like healthy habits, exercise, things like that. Legislation to ban harmful chemicals. One of the things I found that would probably help myself is just because we live in the city, we often have like high pollution days. So
We do have that. We have the pollution advisories all over the freeways here.
yeah, so that's something I guess you could say is kind of a preventive measure for that.
You can wear a mask, you can carpool, kind of reduce your carbon footprint in the bigger picture of things, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the no burn days. Yeah, and then
For the campers out there.
yeah, exactly. And then secondary was kind of cautionary, especially those in the geriatric group. Basically, undergo cancer screenings to try to find, because like you said, most people. I think I knew somebody that they were stage 3 before they even knew.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's just kind of, I guess. Yeah, I mean it's a routine type thing. We check for so many other things, but I can understand how that goes amiss. And then the third thing, tertiary, is kind of basically like the treatment, which could involve chemo, like rehabilitation.
We know that
after
there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, and we just don't want it to really get worse.
exactly. So, I get an A on that test. Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, bring it on.
All right. Thank you.